Welcome back to the Inside the Ring podcast in episode 62. Chris and I are going to talk about Ryan McDonagh's extension in Tampa Bay, how we cursed the Tampa Bay Lightning, Tyler Seguin's injury, the Philadelphia Flyers injury bug, the Winnipeg Jets swap goaltenders, Jesper Wallstedt, possibly a Calder and Vezina candidate this season, as well as Macklin Celebrini being a Hart candidate. Chris, I just want to say, so much to get into, but how are you doing this week?
After some shit this weekend, I'm ready to talk that good shit tonight.
Fair enough. It was a wild weekend. I know just watching hockey over in Manitoba has been the most fun if you're watching the NHL team, but the AHL team here, the Manitoba Moose, have been right on top of it. So, yeah, here we are. And Chris, what a week it's been.
It really has. Starting with the Ryan McDonagh extension, did you see that coming? Because I don't know if I really did.
I didn't. I'll be honest with you. That caught me off guard. And it was one of those that I looked at and I said, you know what? He might go on 1 year. If he were to be a guy they brought back, I didn't see it being 3 years and for the money that it was, which it shows that he's got belief in himself to, one, be in the situation that he's in, but he's also been steady for Tampa Bay. I know he was decent in with the Rangers and with Nashville, but Tampa Bay seems to be his fit, Chris.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was going to be 1 year, especially more so with the injury to start the year. He's still out with an upper body injury, and I thought, that would be a 1 year, let's ride it out and see how much more you got in it. But 3 years, I think it almost guarantees that he is going to retire at Tampa Bay Lightning when this contract does expire. I thought with the 4.1 AAV, I thought that was a pretty solid kind of discount in a way for Tampa Bay. And, I mean, we'll get to the Lightning in a minute and how we curse them, but realistically, this is a team that has been down most of, if not all 6 of their defensemen to start the season, and they were still winning. And, they lock in McDonagh, a key piece, the 1-2 cups with them. It's a top 3 of their defensive core. So if this team wants to win a cup this year, I think he's a key part of it, and they bank on him coming back, being healthy, and being a part of that with Victor Hedman, who I believe is returning. No, he's returning soon, I believe, off the top of my head,
Something
but I have not seen it confirmed. But it's a nice sight to see Ryan McDonagh finishing his career in Tampa Bay, as we kind of expect with this contract.
And you're hitting the nail right on the head there, Chris. It's like, as I pointed out, that he's just been the guy in Tampa Bay. I know there was a stat that came out when Tampa went back-to-back in the Cup Finals, and they're cutting salary and all that. And he was one of the few guys that they had to trade to get under the salary cap. So, Chris, with the way that he's done things, he blocked shots, and Vasilevsky, he's huge. Without McDonagh being there, I would say maybe Tampa realized, like, hey, there's a hole that they need to fill, and they didn't have guys in their lineup to fill that hole.
Also, I think more so what I kind of see with this deal is I see what they've done this year with the injuries and bringing in guys from Syracuse and filling those holes, and McDonagh being there, and it kind of gives more of a veteran leadership in the top and lets these young kids mentor underneath him as they go through more injuries. When he comes back, when Hedman comes back, they keep dealing with it. So bringing in other guys from the AHL that can come up and learn from these veteran players that have won cups and have, performed at the level they have throughout their careers, it branches Tampa Bay almost as a bridge at the blue line to help Vasilevsky, who, him being out also – I'm going to butcher his name, so you're going to have to save me. Jonas Johansson?
Yeah. Johansson.
So, with him being the goalie now for at least the next couple of games, it's a nice piece to have there and help those young kids for their next steps of their future.
And that's certainly it. I know Tampa Bay being the situation they are this season, they weren't expected to be great this year. I know you and I talked about how they're going to kind of play out with our season predictions, but last week we talked about the quote unquote inside the rink curse or the ITR curse, however you want to put it. But we seem to have been successful. Tampa Bay has cooled off, and like Chris, here we are yet again. Is it a reverse thing next week where they go in an absolute heater? We don't know, but we're going to find out.
I mean, so we got to the point of doing the in and out, and I just wanted to curse this team. As a Red Wings fan, I was tired of them at the top of the division. I wanted Detroit to somehow sneak into a playoff spot. Didn't happen that way throughout the week, but I was hoping it would, and it somehow did. The tough part I have with the curse that we seem to do is I always feel like somebody somehow gets an injury, and like what was it, 2 weeks ago we cursed the Islanders, and all of a sudden Kyle Palmieri with his ACL, and he's out 6 to 8 months. I did this curse with the Lightning last week where I said I wanted to curse them. They lost all 3 games last week. Granted, 2 of those were to the Islanders, and now Andre Vasilevsky's out, and they put him on IR, so he's guaranteed to at least miss tonight's game against Toronto and tomorrow's game against Montreal. And that's a tough loss for Tampa. I mean, to keep leading the Atlantic Division, which the top 4 teams are only, I believe, 1 to 2 points apart. I might be wrong there. I know Boston's tied with Tampa. I think Detroit is 1 point back in 4th place, so that would make, I believe, 3rd 1 point back as well. But this is a team tonight going into the game against the Maple Leafs that they were getting Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point back. So, I mean, they got a little bolster back to their lineup. They got their goal scoring back. So we'll have to see how that translates. I mean, they weren't terribly, despite the 3 losses, outplayed. The Islanders just seemed to gotten the best of them in those 2 games out of the 3 in last week.
Yeah, and I just checked. Boston and Tampa are tied for first. You got Montreal in third. Then it's Detroit tied with Montreal. And then it's a 3-way tie for fifth. So there's a lot of it shows the parity in the league first and foremost, but there's so much good talent within the Atlantic, and we're seeing down the stretch of things that even a stretch of bad games doesn't hurt these teams long term. Like, sure, losing your star goaltender in Andre Vasilevsky sucks, but Tampa Bay, they've been a gritty team since they've won their cups, even before that. And John Cooper has shaped them up into a position to where they win. And it's very clearly playing out given the tenure he's had with the team. And also just look at the guys that have been around Cooper. They know his style, and he's obviously not lost his voice. So that's just one thing to look at. Maybe Tampa bounces back tonight, but as of right now, Chris, they're down 1-0. So we're going to see how that changes. So a lot of different dynamics.
That division is just chaotic. I mean, take out Buffalo because, I mean, realistically, we all know what Buffalo is right now. They're 8 points back, but they're going to sell off pieces as the season goes on. But realistically, 1 through 7 is 4-point differential. If Tampa Bay loses tonight and the Red Wings win, the Red Wings are in first place. Then they go into tomorrow night, and Tampa's got Montreal, and Montreal wins that game, or even Tampa Bay wins that game, they're in first place. Like, it's 4 points separating 1 through 7. And that's what Florida's back in it. Toronto at the end, what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago, was in the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and all of a sudden now we're talking about them in 6th place, but 4 points back. It's, this is one of those years when we talked about this last week where the American Thanksgiving is not the case this year. It's just so wide open. Every team except for maybe 5 to 6 throughout the whole league have a chance to really be a playoff team this year.
And I also think that goes off the fact that a lot of these teams that are in these races, they're not pushover teams. We've seen a lot of the one year I want to use as an example is the year before the COVID year happened, where they went into the bubble. A lot of teams could be seen as pushover years, pushover teams teams were rebuilding. I know Chicago, they were a team that you'd face them and they kind of run you over. Anaheim was also like that for a few years. San Jose's like that. But now that these teams are getting better, they're drafting well, and that's also in part of these teams. They're also spending a little bit more time getting better picks in the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds. Maybe there's a lot more work to be done to create more of an even balance between 1 and 32, but we're seeing more teams. Sure, they might not be great or a playoff contending long-term team, but maybe through 50 games, they give team like the top powerhouses some reasonable doubt and they create some noise to when they are good. These top teams, when they do flip the division, there was serious doubt from day one for these teams when they see, let's say San Jose when they face Chicago or when Chicago faces Anaheim, they're going to create some clashes with each other when they get better. But if they face a team like Tampa Bay, as who we're talking about, maybe they're pushing them to their edge because these are young guys who are hungry to get into the league and make their mark against established veterans like Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, and Andre Vasilevsky. So they're, as I was saying, there's almost just a sense to make their mark against these big guys and just take over the league. And we've seen a lot of that with how these guys are putting up points now.
I'm going to make a bold statement, and we've probably talked about this in our prediction. We definitely talked about this in our predictions. But with the parity this season has, and at least to this point in the season, we're just about, some teams are at 30 games, some teams are in that 28, 29, 27 range. I think we're almost, and I'm bold here, almost guaranteed that we're going to see a different and new Stanley Cup final this year.
And I 110% agree with that. And that's off the fact that Edmonton, they can turn the Jets on when they want to, but they're not doing it 82 games a night anymore, and they're not the number one team with that much. Like, they're too top heavy in my opinion. There's so many teams that they have scoring not only from their forward group, but they have it from their defensive group, and that creates just firepower all around. And Montreal is one of the first teams I could think of off the top of my head. However, other teams might be looking at offensive heavy teams and trying to create a structure, say like Florida did, the dump and chase and the hard hitting kind of deal. So maybe we see that kind of evolve long term because Florida, they didn't get into 3 straight Stanley Cup finals and win back-to-back Stanley Cups just on accident.
Nope. And I that's more so saying that too with my statement there was also like looking at it where, we say this every year where you go into a playoffs and, you see the wild card and it's almost like, all right, anybody can beat anybody really. This is the year where you have to go into the playoffs. And I know we're only in December, so there's still a long way to go. But just looking at this is the year where you have to feel like even the 8th seed in the second wild card spot has a real possibility of knocking out the 1 seed and not going 7 games, could even go 5. Like, it's so different. So, like, everything to the season with all these teams has just such a different feel to it than it has in previous seasons.
Yeah, and there's so many teams right now that it just feels different. They're making it feel different. And teams that are doing that are the Anaheim Ducks, Chris. I know they just put up a 7-0 beat down of the Chicago Blackhawks.
7-1.
Over 50 shots, 7-1. Thank you. But over 50 shots, and it looked like it was going to be a 60-shot game with the way that it was going. It was not looking good for Chicago.
This team, and I know right here behind me, you see the Red Wings background. But this season, this team I want to talk about them every single week. And I mean, we have to this point, and rightfully so, they deserve it. Like, nobody, including us, had them making the playoffs in their predictions. Last week, I think we both agreed when we talked about it. And, we look at, they lost Lucas Dostal, who's due to come back, I believe, next week. They lost Peter Mrazek. And we had the conversation 2 weeks ago. They went on that 3-game losing streak. Is this their downfall? We said it last week. Losing both your goalies. Is this your downfall? We recorded last Monday. They went 3-1 last week. The one loss was a brutal 7-0 shutout loss to the Utah Mammoth. But like you just touched on, they put up 7-1 against the Blackhawks. And I mean, Connor Bedard is otherworldly this season. He's putting up fantastic numbers. You kept the Blackhawks and what he's doing and that talent on that team, a team that, again, another team fighting for a playoff spot. You held them to one goal with your third string goalie. You're putting
Mhm.
up fantastic numbers. I mean, Leo Carlson, 4 points in the last 4 games. You know, Beckett Seneke, this guy, unreal, unreal. Going into the season, did anybody expect that? I think we talked about that a couple weeks ago. No, five
I
points.
remember, uh, I
No, go
remember,
ahead.
Chris, that we had talked about where I had him ranked the year he was drafted, and just the shock value of when he was drafted, and considering what he's put up now, this is showing why NHL scouts are NHL scouts.
Again, it's my like last week, 5 points, 2 goals, 3 assists. This to me coming up now, and again, I think I said this. I might have said this last week. If not, I definitely said it 2 weeks ago. I know I brought this up when we talked about it. This road trip that they have coming up is their biggest statement of the season because you're going into this now. They're going at Pittsburgh, at the Islanders, at the Devils, and then at the Rangers and the Blue Jackets. And that Rangers Blue Jackets game is a back to back, and it's also supposed to be the temporary expectation of when Lucas Dostal is returning. So you go into this again. I think it's three of the teams, at least three of the teams. No, maybe two, are a playoff team right now. So this is your real test right now. Going on the road against teams that are fighting or in a playoff spot. What team are you this season? And I said it with the Bruins a couple weeks ago. They went into that road trip, and I said that you have to come out of this, at this record to be for real for me. This is for me the Ducks. I think they're in. I think they're a playoff team. But if you come out of this, what's it, 5 game stretch? If you come out of this, I'll go bold, 4-1, they can win the Pacific. If they come out
Okay.
3-2, they're a playoff team. If they come out 1-4, now it might be time to panic. That's
All
where I can
right.
see the free fall coming.
Okay. That's definitely a significant change considering that you and I were sold 100% right across the board with the Anaheim Ducks. And I know with you and I had like talking about the Anaheim game last night, just it seems like they're not going to slow down even with what they're dealing with injury wise and who's in and who's not. Because they're like I was talking to my dad last night watching the game, and that's how you and I ended up texting. But Anaheim has such a good young core under the age of 28, and it's almost scary what they have right now with that leadership group, like the veteran guys, because they could do some real damage if they figure things out this year, next season, and they've figured things out. But if they elevate it and they add, oh, Chris, we could even be talking about a team that's going deep into the playoffs.
I said this to you last night, and I don't know if you actually answered me. It was late when I said this to you, but the way I watch this team, and it's like they almost, when they play a top team, they play to their level. And then it's almost like sometimes they scoreboard watch. And it's like they Golden Knights who lose the night before, and it's like, okay, we don't really need this game. We're staying a point in first place. But then like they see the Golden Knights either playing before them or the night before or whatever, and it's like they elevate their game to another level. That's just what I see from this team. I love this team. I love watching them. To me, they are must watch every single night they're on. That they've made me stay up until 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning to watch them my time. This team is so fun to watch, and I really do think they're a playoff team, and I hope they are a playoff team. I just think this stretch without your top two goalies is what's going to test you more than anything. I trust Joel Quenneville, and I think I've said that multiple times on this podcast. But it is a tough stretch, and it could be what breaks you, and that could be what demoralizes a team and is hard to come back from. Not, I mean, that's to me my opinion. I personally think they come out of this at worst 3-2, and
Yeah,
and
and
even 3-1-1. I mean, I think they come away with
Yeah,
points.
yeah. They're gonna have points with it, and it's going to be a very interesting kind of. It's going to be a very interesting run of the season because you see what they're made of and you see what they have. And teams that we're going to see what they're made of, given they have veteran guys out. I know Anaheim, they do have veteran guys of their own out, but the Dallas Stars, Tyler Seguin is not just another piece to the lineup. He's one of their driving factors for what they've done in the last few seasons. And I know he's been hurt a lot, but Tyler Seguin being in the stage of his career that he's in, this could be near end of the road kind of deal. I know it's nothing anywhere near that that's been given out, but just given his injury history, Chris, you don't know where that line gets drawn. But I just want to say this: if he'll most likely come back, but it's just where he's at in this stage of his career.
I want to start with saying absolutely brutal, brutal blow for the Stars. Um, my personal opinion, let me rephrase that. I want to ask you this question: what did you think of the overall play if you saw it?
When I saw it, I looked at it, I kind of winced,
I
and then
just
it's a deep breath kind of deal.
the I didn't know what Gavrikov was going for on the play, and that's kind of a little bit of question for me. But overall, I did not like the whole situation. I hate seeing Tyler Seguin, one of my favorite players in the whole league, end his season that way. And at the end of the day, it was a tough loss for Dallas, but they somehow rattled back. They've won three straight, and they beat the Devils 3-0. They beat the Sharks 4-1, and they beat the Penguins 3-2 in a shootout. They have shown their depth. I mean, I was doing the preview because it was a back-to-back. They played the very next day against the Devils after the injury, and I was doing the preview, and I'm like, Sagan's out. Like, who's gonna fill in? And right away it clicked. Bastian slides in, so now the lineups are filled out. Like, they mixed and matched it a little bit, and I think it's working out for them right now. I mean, Rantanen's got points in 6 straight games, and in that 6 straight games, he's got 11 points on 3 goals and 8 assists. Robertson's got a 3-game point streak. Rupe Hintz has 3 assists in 3 straight games. It does make me though question. Like, I've written a couple articles the last week or so about pieces being out there for trades, and the Stars are heavily linked to them. And now with the Sagan, and this was before the Sagan injury. So now with the Sagan injury, are they more so? And the two names I'll mention right off the top of my head are Nazem Kadri and Kiefer Sherwood. Are they automatically into that now? I mean, despite winning 3 straight games, you add one of those two pieces to your lineup, it keeps you right in that race and even competitive with Colorado.
Yeah, and looking at what Dallas has for their mold, like the mold of their team and the long-term outlook that they're looking at with Robertson needing to be re-signed, Kiefer Sherwood makes a little more sense than Nazem Kadri because you don't know if Calgary will retain given the length left on Kadri's contract currently. However, we've seen moves be made and nobody had an idea of certain things. There's also other names that Chris, you and I had talked about, whether they're younger or they're veterans in their career, that they could be very well a fit, like a move that Dallas looks at. Like, look at Nashville and where they're at. I know they're bottom of the Central at the moment, and there's just so many good players on that team. Why wouldn't Dallas try to take a run at a guy like Ryan O'Reilly? I had mentioned him last week with New Jersey, but even Steven Stamkos, if they can maybe even get him out of there. They got Jonathan Marchessault as well. They have guys in their lineup who need a change of scenery, simply put. Why wouldn't Dallas try to take a run, make the bold move for a season rental or a guy they can plug in, and now they have more depth and veteran experience? Because Dallas, they're trying to win the Stanley Cup, simply put. Why wouldn't they make a bold move again?
I get hesitant with that stuff only because I look at a team like Dallas and Nashville, and I say, okay, Nashville's gonna be rebuilding for a couple of years, and if you make that trade with Dallas, Dallas still has the pieces that even by the time Nashville has reloaded, Dallas is still a team you're gonna be battling with. And so that's where I get hesitant if Nashville's going to make a trade within the division for any of those three pieces. I could see it happening, but at the same time, it's just Dallas is loaded from top to bottom, and we've talked about that as they're one of the best teams in the Western Conference. That you add O'Reilly or Stamkos or Marchessault this year, yeah, they are definitely a cup team this year. But even a couple of years down the road when they're gone, Dallas is still, with all that talent, a cup team. That by the time
Yep.
Nashville gets those pieces, do you want to battle a team in your division that you just fed, you know, to give them a cup, and now they're still ahead of you in a way, even when you're finished your rebuild? That's why those three names that we talked about, different places for all three of them outside of that division that I think make more sense. I could see a team like Vancouver, where I said Sherwood, but even other pieces in Vancouver or even Calgary with Kadri or somebody else going to Dallas. Could there be a team in the Eastern Conference like Buffalo that, Dallas goes to and says, hey, here's a deal for, I don't know, off the top of my head, just spitting it out, but Alex Tucker, Tage Thompson, or something like that to give them scoring on the second, third, even top line. You can move Jamie Benn down the second line. But this team, just top to bottom, shows their depth. We talked off before we get on, when we log off each week about AHL stuff, and Texas has had a rough year, but that's a team that went to the Western Conference Finals last year. That they have pieces. You're seeing some of them up right now with Dallas that they could go there if they have to. Like Petrovic's a name that comes to mind. Capo Bianco is another name that comes right off the top of the head. Like they address the blue line. They've lost pieces on defensively. Getting Matt Duchene back is almost right after the Tyler Seguin injury was a huge boost to this team. And you saw it with the 3 straight wins. And adding another piece like any of the names we listed, if they can pull off a trade with Nashville, if they can add Kadri, if they could add Sherwood, you add any of those names to this lineup, I think that honestly, to me, on paper and how they played this season, would put them ahead of Colorado. Now, who knows what Colorado does to reciprocate the trade, but that would to me, right off the bat, put them ahead of Colorado.
And that's 100% where, and you hit the nail on the head. On paper, how does this fit? But the other thing that I'm looking at that maybe isn't being kind of addressed is maybe both Dallas and Colorado are only looking for players on expiring contracts. Maybe they're looking for guys who sign 1-year deals and they're in the tail end of their careers. Maybe they're looking for those guys that they might have signed with a team on a 1-year deal and it's not working out. I got a few names in mind, but Chris, there's names league wide that you can look at that aren't working with their teams.
Absolutely.
And maybe these are because Colorado's famous for bringing guys in. I remember with Miles Wood and Charlie Coyle, they thought those were going to be home runs. And they were good when they first started, and then it took a nosedive. Both of them ended up getting they got traded out to Columbus, but Colorado, just with the way that they're able to kind of configure their team, I don't want to say on the fly, but very quickly, it's one, just looking at it, it's really neat to see, but also kind of intimidating if you're Dallas, realistically, because they're a very, very strong team this year, and they're clicking on all ends. Where does Dallas go from here that they need to try and one up Colorado or even get on that level?
That's what I mean is I think right now they're competitive with each other, that adding one of those pieces, assuming what Colorado does, just elevates them ahead of them. But both teams just dominating the whole league right now, Colorado and Dallas, and they've both dealt with their own injuries in certain ways. Like Colorado just lost. Oh God, I get them both confused all the time. They lost Blackwood, right? Wedgwood's healthy, or is it the other way around?
One of the two.
One of the two is injured, and I mean they're still winning. They just suffered their second regulation loss this past week, so you lose a goalie, and they had a solid 1A, 1B going, and they're still winning games. It just shows you that these two teams have built themselves. And of course, they're in the same division. Like, we couldn't be looking at a Dallas Colorado Stanley Cup final because that would just be so fun to watch. But and I think we're gonna, based on how things are right now, we're obviously gonna avoid it for the Western Conference Finals. So that's just gonna be second round chaos for the most part, and it's gonna be so fun to watch because these two teams are just so similar, and they both have so much talent and they have so much depth that it's gonna be a bloodbath, and I can't wait for it.
And I think, Chris, just going off my last thought here is Colorado, with the amount of injuries they dealt with last season and Landeskog not returning to the end of this season, I think we're seeing the Colorado Avalanche that we should have saw last season in full form this year, because they're one hell of a team, simply put, and they have the pieces to back it up. Absolutely. They added at the deadline and they moved pieces out. Now, like, they're really good on paper, but the way they play the game, it's kind of scary. And Winnipeg has a game coming up against them. And given their recent play, and we're going to get into Winnipeg right away, but given their recent play, that's going to be a very interesting game to watch. And you had mentioned injuries and like it affecting teams, and one team that it's affecting is the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, they weren't expected to be a number 1 team going into the season, but they weren't expected to be number 32 either. This is very interesting to me, considering they're kind of tweening between a rebuild and the retool phase. So it's interesting.
We had them last week, and we both, I believe, I definitely said out. I think you did as well when it came to them. Right now, they're currently 1 point out of the final playoff spot, and with 4 games in hand on the Rangers ahead of them, and 2 games in hand on the Red Wings below them. But like we just said a little while ago with the whole Eastern Conference, it's a mess. I mean, everybody's within each other by 7, 8 points, I think, for the most part. I mean, Ottawa's 9th in the wild card, and they have 30 points, and Tampa Bay's 34 to Washington's 39, so within 9 points. And losing a key piece like Tyson, I'm going to butcher his name, Forster. Wow, look at this. I'm actually 2 for 2 on names tonight.
I was going to say, you were 2 for 2 when you say you're going to butcher it tonight.
Wow. All right, so Tyson Forster out 2 to 3 months with an upper body injury. Cam York is day-to-day with an upper body injury. I mean, that's 2 tough blows to this team who's already missing Rasmus Ristolainen. And, without Ristolainen...
3 for 3 now.
That's a name I'm very familiar with, so that was easy for me.
Okay.
But, I mean, they were been out with Ristolainen for a while, and they were holding a playoff spot. Lose these 2 places. You went 1-2 last week. Didn't get blown out. I mean, you 1-goal games. They were right there. But realistically, this is your crucial week right here. I said it with the Ducks. Like, they have a crucial stretch coming. The Flyers have the crucialist. Is that even a word? Crucialist?
Most crucial
stretch.
What the fuck is crucialist?
I don't know. Listen. Crucial stretch of this, most crucial stretch of the season. They got the Sharks on Tuesday. And then 3 of these games are at home. But then they got Vegas, Carolina. Then they go to Carolina on a back-to-back. That's a tough stretch. The Sharks, we've talked about week in and week out how impressive they've been this season. Vegas is right up there. And Carolina is, we said it last week, the top team to us on paper in the Eastern Conference. You could find yourself going 0-4 next week in this whole week coming up, and you could really fall. I mean, because everybody else in the conference could go on a winning streak. And it could be tough sledding without some key pieces. Now, again, I don't think they're a playoff team. I think this is exactly what they kind of need to bring them back down to earth and figure things out for their future. I mean, getting Trevor Zegras was a huge get for them. Goaltending, they don't really have, to me, that number 1 guy. So this is where you start to figure out what you need and how to get you to that next level and build things. This is going to be a wake-up call for them, and I see them falling a little bit further back in that Eastern Conference race after this week.
Yeah. Like, you just kind of took the words out of my mouth there with Philadelphia. It's a very crucial time of the season, and I know I busted your balls a bit there about crucialist, but So, like, you kind of hit the nail on the head. This is very important for Philadelphia to kind of rebound and rebuild on. Just given the roster construction they do have, they don't have the depth that they need to fill these roles that they do lose. So calling upon AHL guys might not always work. And I know today they made a AHL transaction,
Hmm.
but the guy that they traded for, they had to immediately send him down to Lehigh Valley because he was up with Tampa Bay. Very interesting little transaction note there, but just it's interesting what they're doing, and they're looking for guys who can kind of pad out depth and get called up immediately if needed. And the stage of their season, with there's a good grasp of what they're going to be, and I think we're seeing that now, given they have the injury bug and they weren't playing great when they were healthy. Let's be real.
The AHL had a article the other day about two big prospects for the Flyers, and I'm drawing a blank on both their names, but they were talking about how they were doing very well in the AHL this year. But if you're a Flyers fan, you can't bank on them coming in and saving your season this year. They're not ready yet. They're still getting their feet under them at the AHL level. It's a couple years away. So like the fact that if you're a Flyers fan, we're in a playoff spot last week when we had our conversation of in and out. Um, Hold on to that because there is a time that's coming, but this is not the season, and I think this is where you're going to start to see the free fall. Whereas, we talk about that with the Ducks every week and it still hasn't happened. This is where it's coming for me for the Flyers. And I mean, who knows what perspires this week, but we'll have to see. And it's too chaotic in the Eastern Conference for me for the Flyers to even try to keep treading water and holding that playoff spot and keeping pace with everybody.
And yeah, Chris, you kind of capture everything on that one. And looking at all these teams that have, let's say, rookie guys up on the roster, the Winnipeg Jets today, they made a goaltender swap. They sent down Thomas Milic to the Manitoba Moose and recalled Dominic DiVincentis from Manitoba. And I don't know when DiVincentis is going to play, but I remember you and I a couple of weeks ago, if not last week, we had talked about this being a potential move that the Jets make. It's something that I had expected given the trajectory of the Jets' season, and they haven't been great since Hellebuck went down. So this is something, one, it doesn't come as a surprise to me, but it's also a chance for the Jets to feel out their young prospects and see what they have goaltending wise. This is also not to say that Thomas Milic isn't the guy right now, but Dominic DiVincentis, when he came into the Manitoba Moose organization last year, he he started with Norfolk, he got his call up, and he took it and he ran with it. Thomas Milic was a bit opposite, is he started with the Manitoba Moose, had to go down to Norfolk, get his confidence and get his game in check, and he came up and everything was smooth sailing from there. I'm wondering if DiVincentis has a similar trajectory in the NHL to his AHL debut. Maybe it was maybe he'll be the guy for Winnipeg in the backup slot going forward if Comrie can't figure things out. Because admittedly, Comrie hasn't been great, and the Jets, they're going to cling to anything to try to win games and stay competitive right now because they are not looking too great. They're very close to being a bottom team.
My personal opinion, and this might be, I don't know how you're going to feel if I say this, but I think no matter who they use, Jesus Christ, DiVincentis and Milic, they're setting them both up for failure. The defense they have in front of them right now has not looked good whatsoever. And I think it's kind of showing you what kind of class Connor Hellebuck is in. That with him being out and not being there for this team, they are a bottom of the league team. Like it's just they've offensively they look okay. They can compete with just about anybody. They're physical. They can play their game. But on the back end, they just don't look like they're there. And I don't know if that's like you covering this team more than I do. I don't know if that's a talent thing or if it's just they feel deflated and exposed without Hellebuck there. And maybe that's part of Comrie too. Maybe that's part of why he hasn't looked well. It could be a little bit of everything, but to me, Hellebuck being out for the time he is, this team is seriously, seriously in danger of not even coming close to the playoffs. Now, the upside of everything is we're talking about this right now. They're still in it. They're 2 points out. And, maybe this call up is a change of pace for them, and maybe it wakes everything up, and you see a whole defensive team the next couple of games, and, they're right back in it. But the stretch is not easy for them. This is not going to be a easy stretch. Their next 4 games, they have Dallas, Boston, Washington, and Ottawa. Thankfully, all at home. So that might change things too. But this is a real test for the Winnipeg Jets this coming week.
And they're also staring down the barrel of a Colorado game in their next 7. So and I mentioned this earlier, that 7-game stretch is rather ugly for the Winnipeg Jets. And I agree with you, Chris, when you say they're setting their young guys up for failure, as they did it with their prospects up on the forward group. They're not totally failing Elias Salamonson. They're giving him more opportunity outside of the third pairing. He's played minutes with Josh Morrissey and Dylan Sandberg, some of the Jets' top guys, and he's looked rather decent in these roles. It's just inexperience at the NHL level that catches up to him. And it's not his, I don't want to say it's fault, but it's also just a matter of that rookie level to the game, that rookie experience that, okay, he's going to figure things out. It was the same with Dylan Sandberg forever, Josh Morrissey, and now it's Salomonson's turn. Now with their goaltending stuff, Chris, the Carolina game that Milic started, I don't feel like that was the game they should have started him, but you can't shelter your guy and expect him to put up big numbers against big teams. He was put in the second period in both the Buffalo Edmonton game, and he didn't look terrible. DiVincentis, if he starts a game coming up soon here, and hopefully it's soon, that's going to be maybe a turning point of the season, because as I had mentioned, DiVincentis didn't start in the AHL like Thomas Milic did, and that could be a very strong turning point for the Jets, and kind of a spark that they need if he comes up and he has just the confidence that he has with Manitoba this year. Because having spoken to DiVincentis this year, he takes himself very seriously, and he compares himself and he studies guys like Connor Hellebuck, Ilya Sorokin, Andrei Vasilevsky, the top goaltenders in the NHL is who he's trying to model his game after. And that's going to benefit his game long term. And maybe, as I said earlier, maybe he becomes that shining light that takes that backup role job from Eric Comrie, and the Jets have a very good problem on their hands goaltending wise.
I agree. Right in my notes right away, I wrote I wouldn't have started Milic against Carolina. I would have saved him for that Buffalo game and had him lead his first career start. But things went the way they did, and you kind of set him up against one of the best teams in hockey for failure. Like I said, the defense just doesn't help them out right now. But they definitely need to figure something out. Hopefully this call-up does work out. Hopefully it's a wake-up call to the defense. I don't know what's going on in the locker room. Like, I don't know if they're getting called out or if I'm just seeing things wrong. But they got to figure that out. Like, defensively, they have to wake up. If this team wants to be a playoff team this year, and I don't think, realistically, looking at the standings right now and watching the 3 teams ahead of them play, I don't think they're better than any of those 3 teams. Obviously, we know they're not better than Colorado and Dallas right now. But Minnesota has kind of, and I think you and I talked about this when Hellebuck went out, the door is now open for Minnesota, Chicago, and Utah. And Minnesota seems like the team that grabbed the bull by the horns and took that spot. And that's just, it seems like that's their spot right now. So if Winnipeg has any chance of making the playoffs, it has to be a wild card, which is wide open with so many teams. I mean, they have 2 games in hand on Chicago, and they have one game in hand on Edmonton. that's where they got to look. And can they tread water in that spot or get up towards that spot for when Connor Hellebuck returns? Because if they do that, then once he returns, they're a playoff team. But for right
Yeah.
now, they have to get there somehow, and they got to figure it out, and they got to wake up at some point in time.
And I like how you mentioned the defense, but this is an overall team thing. This isn't, oh, the defense is bad. It isn't that the forwards are bad. This is an overall team thing. And the Jets have had 2 closed door player meetings in their 5-1 loss to Buffalo that I wrote about last week, and then the Edmonton game just a couple of nights ago. Some really bad games by the teams where they had to put Milic in the second period. And Chris, realistically, sure, it can be defensive systems, but this team was the best defensive team for the last 2 seasons. And you look at the team that they have, it's a very similar team to last year. Sure, they got a lot of massive departures on the top end, like the forward group, but what, like, you can say what the hell happened, but at the end of the day, this is a team that seems to be breaking down. They're stubborn. They're aging. Their age has gone up, and they're slower. And other teams have kind of figured them out. And I mentioned it last week, and I'm going to end it with this. They remind me of the Bruins year where Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak was the top line and the only line scoring.
My one takeaway, and the way I looked at it and the way I meant it was more so on the lines of I don't think the defense is bad, but I think overall as a unit, they look lost without Hellebuck behind them. And I think that's the way I see things right now is they're not bad. I don't think any way, shape, or form do I look at this team on paper and say this defense is awful. But I think the second the Hellebuck news hit and that he was out with an injury, the whole team just kind of lost its identity in a way, and then the defense more so than anything. I think it's a whole team thing. I agree with you on that aspect, but I think defensively, I think they took it more negatively than anything else, and that's where it's kind of looked like a different team altogether this year.
Yeah, and you kind of hit the nail on the head for my final thought on that. Staying in the Central Division, and speaking of goaltenders, Minnesota, and I know we talked about him a lot, Jesper Wallstedt, honestly, Calder favorite right now for a lot of people that I've seen. Maybe he even wins the Vezina, Chris. I know it's a hot take, but it could happen.
I wrote the other day, and the more I got into it, I debated changing the title. So I wrote Jesper Wallstedt making a case for the Calder. And as I wrote, did more info on it, I was like, oh, this could really just be Jesper Wallstedt making a case for the Vezina. But right now, as of recording, I looked at DraftKings odds. He's fourth in the Calder at plus 800 behind Schaefer, Demedov, and Seneke. And he is fifth in odds for the Vezina behind Thompson, Vasilevsky, who, depending upon how long he's out for, that could change. Shesterkin, and then this one kind of surprised me, Spencer Knight. So he just suffered his first regulation loss, and he gave up 4 goals to the Canucks. So after talking about him the last 2 weeks straight in the run he's been on, he is human. He is human after all. But I mean, just the fact of looking at his numbers still, even after that loss. So he gave up 4 goals on 20 shots. Still, to look at his numbers after 11 games and go, he's 8-1-2 with a .936 save percentage and a 1.95 goals against average. One bad game and you're still under 2 goals against, and he leads the league in all 3 of those. In save percentage, in 2 of those, save percentage and goals against average, and he leads the league in shutouts. The guy right behind him in every single category is the favorite right now for the Vezina in Logan Thompson. Now, I think the only reason he's not up towards the top of the conversation for Vezina is because of the games played. Now, do we start to see that change? I mean, we just talked about it with Winnipeg. Like, Minnesota has taken that 3rd spot in the Central, and they're running away with it. Now, do you give it to your young goaltender and say the reins are yours for the next couple of games? Let's see what you got. That could put him in the conversation for the Vezina if he performs to that level. But this kid is unreal. I said it I think every time his name comes up, I have to say it. I love Sebastian Cossa. I mean, he was named AHL Goaltender of the Month, AHL Goalie or Player of the Week last week or 2 weeks ago. But Jesper Wallstedt is at the NHL level performing. And he's consistently doing. I mean, again, one bad game just happened, and he still has under a 2 goals against average. This kid is unreal. I want to see it for the next month and get him more playing time. Philip Gustafsson is a great goalie, but the fact that you go from Gustafsson and Fleury as a combo right into this kid coming in, sliding in, and he's putting up the numbers he's putting up, Minnesota is set up in a very nice spot, especially extending Kaprizov the way they did.
Yeah, just Minnesota. I was kind of down on them to start the season, and given what they've done so far, there's a lot of things to like about them. And Chris, I don't feel like this is the last time we're talking about Wallstedt and the Minnesota Wild. Given what they've done in the sample size we have, it's not a 5-6 game sample size. Like, we're talking mid-20s into the season. And Minnesota continues to lock it down and play that hard style. And it's backed up by 2 really good goaltenders. Jesper Wallstedt seems to be running away with the starting goaltender job. There's a very clear-cut number 1, and there's a very clear-cut number 2 in Minnesota starting to form. And that's not a knock on Gustafsson. Gustafsson's been great, but he's being beat out by a guy who's even better than him right now.
There it is. Because last week I asked you this question. If the playoffs started right now, and I asked you this last week, you said you'd rather the hot hand, which at the time you said Gustafsson. And now Jesper Wallstedt did, like I said, suffered his first regulation loss. I'm not positive if it's a career. But now you're saying
It'd be regulation.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's his first of his career because I think he did slide into some games time for time.
Yeah.
But last week we had so last week we had this conversation. Now here we are. We have the 1 and the 2. If the season ended right now, you're going into the playoffs as the 3 seed. You're facing the Dallas Stars. Jesper Wallstedt.
You put in Wallstedt.
I agree.
Put in Wallstedt.
You have to. That's why I'm saying he needs more time. Like the fact that we're talking with his numbers right now, and it's still only 11 games, where I think last week when we recorded, it was 10. So in 3 games this week, he only played in 1. That should change. It should be the other way around. He should be in 2, and Gus should be in 1.
And even if it is the other way around, it's showing the level of confidence that they do have in their goaltending tandem. And if you're a team coming in to face them, and you're going, oh yeah, they were facing Philip Gustafsson, yeah, it's not a goaltender who's easy to beat. I know when Gustafsson put a shutout against Winnipeg, that was fucking phenomenal, Chris. And correct me if I'm wrong. If it was Wallstedt, it would have been the same thing because Winnipeg was not they were not competing to Minnesota's level. That's the level of goaltending Minnesota has. Maybe if they do start to fall out of a playoff race, because then again, it only takes 1 goal to win a game. And what if they're getting beat 2-1, 1-0, 3-2, 3-1, little things like that? Maybe they do end up trading off one of their guys for a very, very big package.
If they can get that. I don't see that happening unless they get that. But realistically, we all know, we talk about him every week. It feels like we could just start talking about including the Ducks and Jesper Wallstedt every week in the episode. But at some point, we do know that he is going to slow down. He's going to have a rest stretch of games. But for right now, ride that hot hand. Like, get more points. Get yourself further away from Winnipeg for when Hellebuck comes back. Get yourself further away from Chicago. Like, take advantage of what you have right in front of you right now. And, at the time comes and he does cool down, he's not off to this stupendous start, go back to Gustafsson because he's a veteran and he can do that. He can be a couple games out and come in for you when you need him like that and stop the bleeding. And that's what, I think Wallstedt has kind of started to build on too. He's a veteran goalie right in front of him. Feed off of all of this momentum, and you can put yourself up in that conversation with Dallas and Colorado because you have the talent all the way around. We talked about Boldy last week. They have the pieces on this team that can propel them to make the Central Division, honestly, the most competitive division, where you have realistically, you could get to the point where all three of these teams are the best three teams in hockey all together. And it could be just a bloodbath in the playoffs where Dallas, like we talked about last year, Dallas and Winnipeg were going to beat up on each other, that whoever they face in the next round is going to have a tired team. It's going to be the same thing. Whoever Colorado gets it, if, like I said, there's parity this year, so it is a little different, but Colorado may get a team that they could take care of business in 4 games, 5 games, and they're rested, and Minnesota and Dallas, based on the talent from both teams, just beat up on each other. So,
Yeah, just you mentioned parity, and we're seeing that even with points and whatnot. And the guy who's in second for points in the league with 43 on the year at the time of recording, Chris, Macklin Celebrini, just absolutely getting everything he can before he gets a contract. Maybe he wins the Hart. You and I had talked about this, but that's a realistic consideration.
my so when I messaged you this, my exact thought was, if the San Jose Sharks, a team that everybody had finishing in last place in the Pacific, you had the Ducks and you had the Sharks as the teams that everybody kind of expected to finish in last place. The Sharks being in eighth. And all of a sudden now we're talking about them in the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, Macklin Celebrini is, and I said this is my exact message to you earlier today. If they make the playoffs, Macklin Celebrini is a lock to win the Hart Trophy this year. And the reason I say that is the Sharks have not made the playoffs since 2018-19. This kid has elevated his game to a superstar level, to the point that right now, entering tonight, he has 43 points, which, like you said, second in the league, 15 goals, not near the top, but he is tied for first with Connor McDavid at 28 assists. That's some intrigue in. He's behind Nathan McKinnon for the top for the goal score for points. Now, he's on pace for 118 points, on pace for 41 goals and 77 assists. If he can reach all of that, again, injuries can happen, Sharks can fall off, they can have that whole stretch. But if the Sharks are a wild card team and make the playoffs after everybody had them in last place, how is this guy not your Hart Trophy winner? And right now, going into tonight, Nathan McKinnon is minus 200. And Celebrini is sixth. He has McKinnon, McDavid, Eichel, Bedard, and Kucherov all in front of him. Kucherov, who's been injured, is still ahead of him. Now, I know the Sharks are not in the playoff spot right now as we record this. They are tied, but because I believe it's Utah, I think it's Utah, has 2 games in hand. If not, it's regulation wins. It's one of the two. The regulation win tiebreaker. The Sharks are not in a playoff spot. If this team makes the playoffs, there's no doubt in my mind. Like, if they get in, Edmonton does not, how is McDavid your Hart Trophy winner?
But to me, like, you got to look at things like McKinnon, he's been a big factor for the Avalanche, and I know there's Martin H's, Gabriel Landeskog, and a lot of talent there, but like, and I get the whole thing that he's elevated himself, but has he elevated himself into the conversation where if San Jose does get into that, like get into the playoffs, as you say hypothetically, does he deserve that Hart Trophy? Because we're seeing Connor Hellebuck with what he did in Winnipeg last season, winning the Vezina, the Jennings, and the Hart. He really cranked it up a notch. He won the goaltending trophies and then the league MVP. Does that kind of set a basis for what they're looking for, or does this put him into that echelon of guys who should be considered year in and year out?
I think it's both. I mean, we talked about this at least twice already, where we talk about the young talent has taken over the league. Talked about with Bedard, we talked about with Celebrini, and we talked about with Leo Carlsson. Now the Ducks are a little bit more different, where they have all of this veteran leadership and the goaltending and all that. We talk about it with Bedard, but we talk about Spencer Knight being in the top 5 for Vezina right now. what other Sharks player is in any conversation for anything? It's realistically the Avalanche are what they are. They have McKinnon, they have all this Natchez, they have McCarr, they have all this talent. But you mentioned Connor Hellebuck. We see it right now. You take Connor Hellebuck off the Jets, what are they? You take
But
Macklin
the other,
Celebrini off the Sharks, where are they?
If you take Macklin Celebrini off the Sharks, obviously they're not going to be doing as well as they have been, but they've padded themselves with that depth around him and the veteran leadership that they do have to bring him into these roles. And if he were to be hurt even for a small amount of time, sure, it would be felt on the team. But given his age and how he's starting to develop, San Jose would plug the gap. I know Misa would be able to step up given what he's done so far. However, it would still be something that ripples through the team.
That's kind of where I look at things. So right now we have this conversation this season, 2025, 2026. Michael Misa's not to that level yet. He's in the AHL recovering from an injury. They're going to lose him come World Juniors. He's on Team Canada's roster.
Yep.
So you take Nathan McKinnon off the Colorado Avalanche. Are the Colorado Avalanche still the top team in the NHL right now?
They're going to be one of the top teams, but
okay,
they're not going to be as dominant as they have been.
No,
49 points speaks for itself.
Right, but you take McDavid off the Oilers. Are they still the Oilers with Draisaitl and all the talent they have around there?
Arguably, yes, because Draisaitl and McDavid are the best two players right now in the game.
But that's what I mean.
Some of the two.
If this team makes the playoffs, that's why I put that stipulation. Yeah, okay. If they make the playoffs, if they don't make the playoffs, then there's no question about it. Then you give it to McKinnon or McDavid or Eichel. You have that conversation with those three. But Celebrini, if this team makes the playoffs, even if I'd say even more so, it's definitely a lock if they finish top 3 in the Pacific. But I say it's still a lock even if they make a wild card, because without Macklin Celebrini, this team does have talent, but they're not a playoff team.
I think that's also a testament to what they built in San Jose, and just where they're at this year compared to last. So, I understand wanting to give him the heart if he were to drag the team into the playoffs, but to me, it seems like there's so much talent around that Hart Trophy that could be considered, that even if he finishes 5th for dragging them into the playoffs, that feels like a massive pat on the back for him and saying, okay, we can see Macklin Celebrini in the top 3 next season, and then maybe even winning the trophy the year after.
I think with him,
not a knock if he finishes top 10.
I think him and Bedard, adding with McKinnon, McDavid, Eichel, all those names, it's going to be this is a competition top 10 every single year going forward. And barring injury, one of those names will fall out, but it's a conversation every single year. But I think this is the year that he deserves the Hart Trophy if they make the playoffs. If this is next year and he has the season he has and they miss and they make the playoffs or whatever, I'm confusing my words here, but if they next year when they have more pieces developed and they have more things going, if he's having the season he has and McKinnon is doing what he's doing, I could say differently. I see them not being the winner, but this season with him being the guy and them not having everything fully established yet, if they make that jump to the playoffs, is to me what puts him high and above everybody else.
Yeah, and Chris, I feel like this is a conversation that we're going to have as time goes on. But until then, it's always great to talk hockey, and we're going to see how Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard, and all those names in the NHL today do the teams that we speak about. And until then, like I said, great to talk hockey, and we'll see you next week, everybody.
Have a good week, everyone.